Just the other day I found this in the thrift store. This is the Flintstones. I'm not talking about the movie, the one with John Goodman and Rick Moranis and Rosie O'Donnell, or the other one with the King Robert Baratheon from Game of Thrones, or one of the Baldwin guys. This is the original Flintstones. This tape that I have here in my hands, it is 90 minutes long. It is Hanna Barbera Personal Favorites. 4 episodes. And they're taken from, various seasons of the original run of the Flintstones when it was on television in prime time. So there's 4 distinct episodes on here, and each one gets a little introduction from William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. And they give a little intro, a little, set up the episode. It is nice to see them talk about it and why these particular episodes are their favorites. I don't really think I need to introduce the Flintstones to you. Fred, Wilma, their neighbors, Barney, Betty, Fred has a dog named Dino, and so forth. They're basically like they're cavemen, but they have kind of all the amenities of modern day life, or at least like 1960s modern day life. So it's set up very similar, in a very similar sitcom way to The Honeymooners. And the comparisons are obvious. There was a time I heard that Jackie Gleason wanted to actually sue Hanna-Barbera for using these concepts in the Flintstones. But then he's quoted as saying, well, I didn't want to be the guy that yanked Fred Flintstone off the air. So the first episode that's featured on here, I do really kind of like this one because it's like an iconic Flintstones scenario. It's called Split Personality. Fred gets whacked on the head and turns into a totally different person. Normally, of course, Fred Flintstone's very grumpy, very, kind of a loudmouth, know-it-all, bosses everybody around, he's grumpy all the time. Yeah, that's Fred Flintstone, right? Accidentally, during one of his freakouts, gets whacked on the head with a bottle and knocks him out. And then he wakes up and he's like very cultured and refined, and he wants everybody to refer to him as Frederick. And he likes to listen to the opera, and he likes to help around the house, and he's such a good husband, and he's so polite, and he's so mild-mannered and kind and nice to everybody, and everybody's like, wow, we should have thought of this a long time ago. But after a while, but even his wife gets a little bit annoyed with him because he's not the same man as she married. And Barney, Fred's best friend, gets annoyed with him because Fred's such a weenie now. He doesn't want to do the things they used to want to do together, and all he wants to do is like all this culture-y kind of stuff and boring. And basically Fred becomes a boring weenie, and they're like, oh man, what are we going to do? Barney comes up with this bright idea that, well, a smash on the noggin and put him into this, maybe another smash on the noggin will take him out of it. So he rigs up a rock on the top of the door. Fred goes through the door, rock falls on his head, and he immediately starts yelling and going back to being a Fred Flintstone. Not Frederick, but Fred. And, he's back to normal. He's a jerk, and he's yelling at Barney, and he's super grumpy guy, and everybody's like, oh, that's our Fred. And so you may recall as well that the Flintstones have a daughter named Pebbles. Pebbles Flintstone, little baby, red-haired baby girl. She's super cute, and all she says is goo goo gaga and all that. And this second episode, which is called The Blessed Event, the episode starts and Wilma is pregnant. We all know Wilma is pregnant. Fred is getting real nervous, and the big day is coming up, and I'm going to be ready at the drop of a hat to take my wife to the hospital and to attend to all her needs and everything that she needs up until that day. And then, once the baby's born, of course, as well. And he wants to be a good dad, and I think, the birth of his child is kind of turning him around a little bit, and you see a bit of that in this show. But he's still, he's still an idiot, and so he does this, dress rehearsal thing where, he practices getting to the hospital on time and, getting everything ready and together and getting his wife to the hospital. So Barney stands in for Wilma, and they do a dry run, and he throws a shawl over his head and pretends to be the wife, and they practice getting to the hospital. They even run into this cop that pulls them over, and the guy's like, "Oh man, your wife is ugly," kind of thing. Then it turns out, of course, Wilma really does have to go to the hospital, and she's like, "Fred, it's time." And so he freaks out, and they're like, "Well, we just did this dry run. Oh my god, okay." And then he screws it up, and for some reason he ends up taking Dino to the hospital instead of Wilma. Same cop pulls him over, and he's like, "Man, how many wives does this guy have? Like, and they just keep getting worse." Anyway, it's a big rigmarole, and it's like that's the laughs in the show. And the show ends with, of course, Pebbles being born. Yeah, I guess that's a memorable event from the Flintstones history, but the episode itself wasn't that funny. It was alright. Then there's a weird one on here that I kind of remember seeing this one back in the day in reruns. It's called Anne Margaret Presents. Now, Anne Margaret is, of course, Anne Margaret. If you're not familiar with Anne Margaret, she was in like Elvis movies. She was a singer. She was also the mother in Tommy, the Who's rock opera Tommy. Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't really know that much about Anne Margaret, but at the time of this cartoon, I mean, she was a huge star, so they wanted to capitalize on that, and also, promote her a little bit, and as well increase viewership of the Flintstones, maybe make it cool for the younger generation that's into like Anne Margaret's music and stuff like that, and did a little crossover thing. It was kind of cool. She's a great singer, but the episode itself isn't really that funny, or it's not that exciting or anything like that. And Margaret gives a concert, and meanwhile she disguises herself as just plain old Annie and becomes a babysitter for the Flintstones. Yeah, but it all works itself out in the end, and Fred and Barney get to sing a song with her on stage, and hooray! Now, the last one on this tape, I think was probably my favorite, even though it was the weirdest one. I mean, not my favorite Flintstones episode, like, overall, but the favorite one on this tape. It features the Great Gazoo. Great Gazoo is, of course, a little space alien dude, little space wizard, or whatever he's supposed to be, that only Fred and Barney can see, for whatever reason. But he can grant wishes, and he like snaps his fingers and blink, and then makes things appear or disappear, or he changes things or people or whatever, makes your wishes come true. Meanwhile, there's like this evil supervillain or whatever that is supposed to be like a Bond villain. His name is Stonefinger. As a matter of fact, the episode's called The Stonefinger Caper. So there's this villain out there, and he's got this one finger. It's like hard as stone, and he keeps smashing tables with it or whatever when he's yelling. He wants to capture this famous scientist, and it turns out, of course, the guy looks exactly like Barney Rubble, except he's got like a beard and a mustache and glasses on. So he sends his goons out, and they think that Barney is this professor because he looks just like him, and he happens to wear a brown shirt exactly like Barney always does. Yeah, so they follow the Flintstones home from a film one time because hey, is that professor we're looking for? The Flintstones know that they're being followed. They're driving around with the Rubbles in their car. And they're like, wouldn't it be exciting if we had a car, like a spy car, like in that film we just saw? They're like, oh, our lives are so boring. We need more excitement in our lives, and blah, blah, blah. So Fred and Barney are talking about this kind of thing. And then suddenly the Great Gazoo, blink, appears right there. And he's all like, what's up, dum-dums? And so he grants them a wish, and he gives them this like spy car or whatever. And it's like the super fast car, and it's like the sports car. Fred and Barney are like driving around town all crazy and super fast and everything. And they're like, "Ooh, this is too exciting for us." And it costs them like all this money in tickets and things, like speeding tickets and parking tickets. Fred and Barney are like, "Oh my god, this thing is costing us so much money. This isn't what we really want. This isn't what we wish for." Throughout the course of this cartoon, Fred and Barney get captured by the goons and taken to the supervillain's lair, and he's going to feed them to this like some beast, the Horrorsaurus, I believe it's called. They're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe we got in this situation. Please, Great Gazoo, please help us." And so he comes in and he shrinks down the monster that's going to eat them, and then chases it away, and then sets them free and helps them escape from the bad guys. The car's no longer an issue because it like disappears or whatever, and they go back to their normal lives and stuff. And Betty and Wilma are like, what happened to the car, you know? And they're like, well, you know, truth is, girls, we had to give it up. It was more hassle than it was worth. Anyway, they all have a good laugh and they appreciate what they have in their lives already and how wonderful their lives are. And, you know, the great Gazoo gives a little breaks the fourth wall, gives a little speech and says, you know, it's not about giving them what they wish for. It's making sure that they wish for the right things, or some such moral. And you know, I used to actually kind of not like the Great Gazoo, played by Harvey Korman, of course. But now that I watch these old episodes, I'm like, you know, you made things interesting. I mean, the Flintstones was getting pretty stale. So they had to introduce a whole bunch of new concepts and new characters and situations and things like that in order to keep the stories fresh. Yeah, the Great Gazoo. Yeah, he's all right. Bit of a Deus ex machina, but hey, this is 1963 or 1965 or whatever this was. So overall, like, what would I give this tape? Well, you know, brought back a lot of memories for me. Very nostalgic. I always loved the Flintstones, and I'm gonna have to give this like a B plus. Yeah, it was great seeing the Flintstones again. I mean, they've been with me since I was a little shaver back in the day, back in the actual Stone Age. So I think Fred and Barney and the rest of the Flintstones gang deserve a B plus. If you're a Flintstones fan, I highly recommend finding a copy of this, Hanna Barbera Personal Favorites Flintstones, or of course you could probably get it on a streaming service or tons of DVD box sets, that sort of thing. I prefer this format. This is random, found it at a thrift store. It's got 4 good episodes on it. Satisfied my Flintstones fix for a little while anyway. Hey, I had a gay old time. So as always, have a good one out there, everybody.